Good morning, children. How are you all? I am Radhika, your biology teacher at Dr. Bison School. So, we have been studying excretion in human beings. In the previous video, we have studied about the process of urine formation. Do you recollect? Yes? What are the different steps involved in urine formation? So, for a quick recap, we see that urine formation involves 4 steps. What are those? They are, first one is glomerular filtration, second one is, yes, tubular reabsorption, third one is tubular secretion, and the last one, fourth one is formation of a hypertonic urine or concentration of the urine, formation of a concentrated urine. All these things we had studied in the previous video. Now, after that, after the urine is formed in the nephron, I told that urine is collected by the collecting duct. Then it is carried to the pelvic region or the pelvis of the kidney. You remember that, isn't it? From there, the urine is carried by the ureters. Okay, so this urine is carried by the ureters. So I just get the chart. All of you have got the books with you all. Okay, please get the books and all. I'll also get my chart. I forgot to bring it. Okay. So here I have got the chart with me, children. See, today we are going to study further what happens in the kidney, in the ureters, how it is carried. Okay, so here you can see that I have got the chart with me. Okay, can you all see this one? Already earlier also I have shown this one. Same chart I have shown in the previous video also, isn't it? So here we see that from the, see, all these are the different pyramids, isn't it? Within this, the nephrons are there. So from there, the nephrons will be releasing into this, into this region. Okay, that is into the pelvis region. Okay, from the pelvis region, it is carried by the ureters. Okay, and this region, I told that this bent region of the kidney. Okay, this part where you can see this renal artery, renal vein, and all that bent region of that kidney is there. No, that is called as the hilus. So from there, the ureters will arise. So approximately these ureters are approximately 30 centimeters long. Okay, they are 30 centimeters long. You can see this, isn't it? So they are 30 centimeters long and they enter into the urinary bladder, 30 centimeters long and tubular and elastic in nature. So now, in the ureters, how the urine would move. We have studied about peristalsis, isn't it, in the previous lessons. So in the ureters, okay, so here you can see the 2 ureters, isn't it? These 2 are the ureters. So these are approximately 30 centimeters long and here they will pass into the urinary bladder. From behind, you can see that they are not joining from the front but from the back side obliquely at a particular angle, I told, isn't it, like this. In an oblique manner, they would be entering into the urinary bladder. Okay. So like this they are carrying, and this movement of urine through the ureters is by peristaltic movement or peristalsis. Okay, children. Now we shall see about the urinary bladder, which is a bag-like structure or a distensible. Distensible means what? Elastic in nature, which can increase the volume and decrease, just like any balloon. Okay, or a sac which is elastic in nature. So this extends and distends. Okay, so this will be normally in a smaller condition, later it can extend. So approximately it can hold 300 to 400 to up to 800 ml of urine. Okay, so that is the maximum capacity of urine that it can hold within the urinary bladder. Okay, it is highly elastic in nature. So now what happens as the urine would be entering into that? Okay, so now this urine would be entering, it will be placed. Now approximately when it is around 300 to 400 ml, when it fills in the urinary bladder, at that time what happens, there is an urge. Okay, we feel that we should go for urination. How it will happen like that? Okay, it happens because, okay, it will happen because, see, when it fills inside this, at that time, okay, the muscles will be stretched. Okay, the muscles would be stretched as the volume increases. As the muscles are stretched, they'll create a reflex action. Okay, reflex is created. Okay, so that reflex action will be sent, and because of that, we feel that it is full. We should go for urination. Due to that reflex action, the nerve endings will send this message to the brain. Okay, and how this will happen? So as it is, I said that it approximately holds 300 ml to 400 ml, approximately 800 ml, and it passes through the urinary urethra. First one I told about the two ureters, then I told about the urinary bladder. Now after that, from the urinary bladder, the passage to pass the urine outside, that is called as urethra. Okay, so this urethra is approximately 4 centimeters long in the females, whereas 20 centimeters long in the males. Okay, and one more thing is that in the males, okay, in the males it is a common opening for the reproductive organ as well as the excretory organ. Okay, that's why we say call this as urinogenital duct. Duct is the passage through which the urine would be passed. So it is approximately 20 centimeters long in the males, whereas in the females it is only 4 centimeters long. Now, after this, in the urethra, okay, there will be two sphincter muscles. Okay, there will be approximately two sphincter muscles. I shall be drawing on the board small. Okay. So if you consider that these are the ureters like this, they are getting the urine. Okay, they are carrying the urine like this, and they are joining into the urinary bladder at a angle. Okay, consider that this is the one. Yesterday also I have drawn this diagram, isn't it? So we see that this is the one. So from back they are coming, so we cannot see that clearly. I told that this urinary bladder is highly muscular in nature. So this is the urethra. You consider that this is the urethra. Okay, and this is the urinary bladder. Okay, these are the ureters. Now, what happens is, this region where the urine has to pass to the outside, there will be two sphincter muscles. Okay, there will be two sphincter muscles here. Okay, the upper sphincter and the lower sphincter, or the inner sphincter and the outer sphincter. Upper sphincter. What are sphincters? And the lower sphincter. What are the sphincter muscles? What are those? Do you remember? In the digestive tract also I told that there are sphincters present in the stomach. Opening of the stomach, from the esophagus into the stomach, from the stomach into the intestine and all, there are sphincters. Sphincter means what? They are the muscles which will be constricting or dilating. Constricting and dilating, just like a tap, opening and closing. They'll close or open. Okay, so what happens is there are two such sphincters. One is the inner one or the upper one, and the other one is the lower one or the outer one. Okay, like this two sphincters are there. One is to the, okay, like this you can see it will be guarding. So in normal conditions what happens? Both of them are constricted, they will be closing that. Then now as this urinary bladder, it fills up to 300 to 400 ml, then what happens is, this bag will distend or it will increase in the volume. So this creates a reflex action and a message is sent. Due to that, what happens, this muscle, this sphincter muscle that is there, the inner one or the upper one, that one will open. Okay, that one will open. Okay, and we feel like passing the urination or passing the urine. Okay, or this process of passing the urination is called, urine is called as micturition. So we feel like maturing, but still the outer one or the lower one is closed, it is constricted. It remains constricted like that up to it fills, as it has to fill till 700 to 800 ml. So initially what happens, as it is slightly filled, okay, 300 to 400 ml, immediately we feel like that, but still the bag can hold some more urine till it fills around 700 to 800. So that is the maximum capacity of the bladder. As it fills, before that, if the micturition is done fine, or else as it is fully filled, then what happens is there is immediately that lower one or the outer one also opens, okay, involuntarily, and there is involuntary urine passage, okay, or the involuntary micturition. As it is completely filled, then we get a pain also, and it involuntarily passes outside because the bag cannot hold more urine than that. Understood, children? So like this we see that the what happens, this is the whole process of urine formation, and this will happen in all the people, and in the small children till the age of 2 years or so, they don't have the control, voluntary control of the micturition is not there in the children. Gradually from 2 years they learn the process of micturition, okay, by what it could be, what kind of condition. So it is conditioning or the learning process where the muscles are conditioned voluntarily and they can micturate voluntarily. Okay, children, so here what we see, once again I tell, the ureters would be carrying the urine into the urinary bladder, which is a sac like structure or a bag like structure which can hold the urine up to 700 to 800 ml. Okay, so as it fills up to 300 to 400 ml, then we feel like there is an urge for urination. So that is because of the upper or the inner sphincter muscle being relaxing. Okay, as it gets relaxed, okay, so this urge for urination is there. Then even then the outer one is still closed, so still it can hold for some more time. Once it is up to 700 to 800, one is opened, then there is involuntary micturition. So like this, with this whole process of micturition occurs, and per day around 1.6 to 1.8 liters, 1.6 to 1.8 liters of urine is passed by an adult. Okay, urine per day. Okay, 1.6 to 1.8 liters of urine is passed per day by an average adult. But this will vary. Okay, how it will vary depends upon the type of food we consume. If we consume more amount of fruit juices or the fluid content like the juices, water, etc., then the amount of urine would increase. Okay, then the amount of urine would increase. Or if we don't consume, then it will be reduced. Even during the winter also, as the sweat is lesser, we can more urination can be observed. In summer, the urination could be reduced. Okay, so you have written, so this process is what? The passage of urine through the urethra. Okay, that is called as micturition. Understood, children? So next we shall go to the composition of urine and how it will vary. Now, I told that the urine, the main wastage in the urine is what? The urea, uric acid and all these. So these are nitrogen rich substances, and they all come mainly from the protein food. So if at all we have a protein rich food, then we observe that the amount of nitrogenous waste, okay, or the urea could be more. Okay, the urea could be more. Then one more thing here, see, think and discuss boxes given on page number 82. Do cells need excretion? Do they need excretion or not? The cells need excretion or not? Yes, the cells need excretion. Then why we advise to take sufficient water? Why do we need? Because the nitrogenous waste from the body has to be thrown outside. For that, sufficient amount of water is needed, or else the waste cannot be thrown out of the body and it gets accumulated in the body. For that, we are supposed to be taking more amount of water regularly. Next, why do some children pass urine during sleep at night until 15 to 16 years of age? Now, can you tell? I have just now explained about the urination, isn't it? Some of them are still doing, they still do like that. Why do you think so? It's because of the sphincters. Okay, they are still not in the voluntary control of these children. That's why they still urinate during the night. Okay, next one is composition of urine. As I told, more protein rich food if we consume, then there is more formation of urea in the urine. Understood? As why do you think it is like that? The proteins get deaminated. That means the amine group is released. Amine group is or ammonia is released in the liver, and this ammonia gets converted into urea. That is why if we have protein rich food, then more urea could be there in the food. Similarly, there could be traces of glucose also if carbohydrate rich food is consumed regularly. Okay, but people who are suffering from diabetes, in them we generally find more glucose to be present in the urine. Okay, as in the blood as well as in the urine samples, more glucose can be observed in the diabetic patients. Not diabetes insipidus, but diabetes mellitus, which we shall study in 5th chapter. Okay, sorry, the yes, 5th chapter. Okay, next. So what does the urine contain? So the urine mostly contains 96% of water. Please write down this also. Composition of urine. Okay. So what it contains? 96% water. Okay. Next we see 2.5% is organic substances. What are organic? I have been telling right from the first chapter. What are those organic substances? Carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all these are organic substances. But here, what organic substances we are concerned about? They are nothing but the waste products like urea, uric acid, creatinine, etc. Urea, uric acid, creatinine, etc. I am not writing all these organic foods. Okay, now inorganic is around 1.5%. 1.5% is inorganic waste. What will be the inorganic substances? Like all the salts. We have studied about different salts being excreted from the body, isn't it? So all those salts like sodium, chloride, phosphate, sulfate, magnesium, calcium, iodine. Okay, all these. Sodium, I just write the symbols. Okay, chloride, then we can write phosphate. Okay, then we have got sulfates, etc. like that. Okay, and magnesium, calcium, then iodine. All these substances are the inorganic waste substances which are thrown outside the body. And normally, what is the pH of urine? pH is around pH is around 6. Okay, it is 6. So what it is? Acidic or basic? It is acidic in nature. So the urine is acidic in nature. Okay, because of the urea, uric acid and all, it is acidic in nature. Now, what happens is, as the urine remains outside, if it is exposed to the air, okay, then at that time what happens? The urea is converted into ammonia. Okay, it is converted into ammonia. Understood? Then it tends to become alkaline. Then it becomes alkaline. Okay. So here, when it is exposed for some time, when it is exposed to the air for some time, then the urea gets converted into ammonia and becomes alkaline in nature. Otherwise, normally the urine is acidic in nature. We see the composition of urine. It is 96% is most of it is water. Then 2.5% is the organic substances, 1.5% are the inorganic substances, and pH of the urine is 6. All these things are very important for the bit part. So all of you must note them down properly. Okay, please note down that. Then we shall continue to the next part of that chapter. Okay, So I just rub it off. Then we shall go to what happens if the excretion doesn't occur. Okay, you would have observed many people suffering from many diseases. Okay, wherein the urine is not passed properly, or some of them are having stones in the kidneys, or it could be excess amount of blood pressure or high amount of glucose. That is, they are suffering from diabetes, or there are stones. There is some infection in the kidneys. Okay, some kind of infection, stones, or it could be because of high amount of blood pressure or very high amount of glucose in the blood, that is diabetes. When all these conditions, any one of the conditions and all these conditions, then what happens? Then there is no proper urine formation in the kidney, or it could be blockage. Okay, so at that time what happens? The urine is not formed. Consider that the urine is not formed in the kidneys, then what would happen? The waste get accumulated, isn't it? The waste gets accumulated in the body, and both the kidneys, if they are not able to form the kidney urine, okay, then what happens? They suffer. When both the kidneys fail to form the urine, then what happens? All the waste is stored inside the body. Then those people feel very lethargic, very weak. They are not able to carry out any work, as the waste is accumulated in the body, and they need fresh blood. Without the waste, they need the blood to be present in the body. So they are not able to carry out any work, and their hands, legs and all are swollen due to the accumulation of fluids with the waste. So in such conditions, so this the disease that they suffer, that is called as ESRD. That is called as ESRD. What is this ESRD? Very, very important. Okay, full form you must remember. For the bit part, this is end stage renal. Anything related to the kidney, I told it is called as renal. End stage renal disease. It is called as end stage renal disease. And here in this condition, what they suffer from? They suffer from accumulation of fluids in the body. Okay, in the legs and hands, they are quite swollen. Okay, and they are very weak. They are not able to carry out any work. All these conditions. Okay, such condition where all the waste accumulates in the body, that is called as uremia. That is called as uremia. Okay, both of them you have to remember. Okay, both of them you have to remember. Extra fluid and water with our body is filled with extra water and waste products. Here I write down, when the body is filled with extra water and waste products. Okay, then it is called as uremia. Please note down these two. Then what happens? When both the kidneys are not working, then there are chances that we need to replace the kidney. Okay, a normal person can live with one single kidney which is functionally good. Okay, which is able to function properly. So in such case, what happens? Transplantation or the kidney donation. If at all a person is suffering, so both the kidneys are failed, then so another person can donate the kidneys. So, okay, that we shall be studying later, but till the time the kidneys are arranged and they are replaced, it could take some time. So how the person is going to live till then, till the kidneys are arranged? Okay, till that time, the person may live on with the support of an artificial kidney. Okay, an artificial kidney. That means a machine is arranged, and this artificial kidney is nothing but a dialyzer. Okay, it is this whole process wherein an artificial kidney is connected to a person, and all the wastes are absorbed from the body. Okay, all the wastes are collected into the artificial kidney. So this whole process, this is called as dialysis. So in such condition, the person has to take up the process that is called as dialysis. That is called as dialysis. Okay, so here we shall be studying about the dialysis or the artificial kidney. How it is work? How it is? How does it work? Artificial kidney. Okay, children, we shall be seeing about the dialysis or the artificial kidney. So if you have noted down that, I'll have to draw the diagram. See, in the textbook the diagram is given. You may have to label that, but you also need to learn the diagram. You need not draw that person on the bed, but you have to certainly draw the machine. It's an important 4 marks question. I told that urine formation is important, the nephron diagram is important, very very important. Just like that, this dialysis is also very very important question. Okay, so it carries lots of marks and you all need to be thorough with that. So here I draw the diagram for dialysis. I draw the diagram for dialysis. Today we shall be learning about the diagram, then we shall be seeing how it can be carried out. We have seen that the waste blood is connected from the artery, isn't it? So here also we see that the waste blood will be collected from the artery. So for that we need to draw a machine like this. Okay, consider that this is the machine. Okay, inside this machine we see many thin membranes or the pipes passing in between the thin membranes, and those membranes are cellophane membranes. Okay, why these membranes are there? Can you relate to 9th class? In 9th class I have told about osmosis. Do you remember what is that osmosis process? Okay, here you can see. So that is you all have to draw the diagram with me. So this is the inlet. Okay, this is the inlet to the person. He is getting the waste blood from the person. This tube I am showing. Okay, and it is connected to the artery. It is connected to the artery, and this is the outlet which is going. Outlet means from there, not from the body. Okay, this side also I just draw. All of you please keep the pencil. With that you all need to draw the diagram of this dialyzing machine. Okay, so as I told, this contains the, this one contains the cellophane tubes. Okay, and cellophane membranes would be there, and the tubes are also made up of that, and through which the blood is passing. As the blood passes, the process of osmosis occurs. Okay, so consider that this is the urine, and here one more bottle I need to draw. Okay, so this is the fluid called as the dialyzing fluid or the dialyzer. So this fluid will be somewhat like the composition of our blood, but this will not contain any nitrogenous waste in it. So this fluid is prepared by the doctors. Okay, when the dialysis has to occur, say a patient is suffering, he needs dialysis. When we consult the doctor at that time, depending upon the composition, the different substances that are there in the blood, they are varied a little bit, more or less according to the patient's blood samples, they are varied. Okay, so here we see So I just draw this to represent the blood. I just put it here inside this. Okay, for your understanding. Okay, showing that the blood is carried. Now, as the blood is carried to the from the body, okay, an anticoagulant is added. This anticoagulant is this anticoagulant prevents the clotting of the blood, because as it is exposed to the air, the blood may clot. To prevent the clotting, an anticoagulant is added once it comes outside the body, and that anticoagulant is heparin. That is heparin. I shall be labeling. You must label in the diagram in the textbook as well as in the notebook. Okay, children. So these tubular structures are there. In between that, there are cellophane membranes. Okay. So now what happens is, as the blood flows through these tubes, okay, the dialyzing fluid will be in between that. The tank will contain the dialyzing fluid, and in between that the blood is flowing. So what happens is, the waste will be moving into the dialyzing machine. Okay, it will be going into that. So here we can see that this part is collecting the urine. Okay, all the nitrogenous waste. All the nitrogenous waste will be collected in this, and drop by drop it will be collecting into this. So this whole process takes around 3 to 6 hours, and depending upon the patient's condition, the dialysis may be required once in a week, twice in a week, or thrice in a week. Okay. So here So here we can see that this is the whole blood that is coming back. This is the purified blood. Okay, I just draw the arm here, only the arm and nothing else. Okay, so once again I am drawing the arm. So consider that this is the finger of the hand of the man. So near the elbow region, we can see that it is collected. Okay, with the help of a tape, here the connection will be there. Okay, so this is the elbow region from where it is collected. Okay, so I just show the arrows with this pen with the white color. Okay, so it is going through this, and then here it is a condition. Again, this it is coming back. So it is going to the vein. Okay, this one that is coming, you can label here as from artery. In the textbook it is not given label. Okay, from the artery, and this one is from the vein, from the artery and to the vein. So here what happens? So this is the dialyzing fluid. This is dialyzing fluid or the dialyzer. Okay, now this is the nitrogenous waste. Nitrogenous wastes. Okay. This whole process also called as hemodialysis. I also write here as hemodialysis. Any of them can be asked in the exam. Okay. Okay, into this what is added? Into this fluid what is added? Heparin is added. Heparin. What is heparin? Anticoagulant. Is anticoagulant is added. Heparin is added. Okay, why it is added? Very, very important question they ask. It is added to prevent the. Now, here what happens? So you all can draw this. So complete. I have labeled all the parts. This is the typical dialyzing machine. Very simplified diagram I have given. Okay. So this is the one. Now this is going upwards. This is going upwards. The dialyzing fluid will be going upwards, and in between that the dialyzing fluid will be there. Okay. So that dialyzing fluid will, in between that, what happens? This is the dialyzing fluid. Between the cellophane tubes that are there, in between them the dialyzing fluid would be there. Now what happens is, as the blood passes from the major artery, okay, from the body, the blood is collected from the major artery and it passes through this dialyzing fluid. Okay, as it passes through the dialyzing fluid, what happens? The composition of the dialyzing fluid and the blood will vary. How it will vary? The blood will not will contain the nitrogenous waste which is absent in the dialyzing fluid. So in this region what happens? No nitrogenous waste. Okay, this does not contain any nitrogenous waste. Okay, so now what happens? See, the blood is collected from the artery. Okay, so as this blood passes through that, into that the heparin is injected. Then as it passes through this, and in the tank what is there? The dialyzing fluid is there. That is coming from this dialyzer. Okay, as it fills, and in between that, this through the cellophane tubes the blood is flowing. Now they are made up, they are surrounded by the cellophane membrane. Okay, so this cellophane membrane is permeable in nature. Then what happens? The blood contains lots of nitrogenous waste which is not there in the dialyzing fluid. So this nitrogenous waste will move outside into the, okay, into the dialyzer. It moves. Okay, it moves. Okay, it will move from all the sides into the dialyzer. The nitrogenous waste will be filtered into that. Now this nitrogenous waste that is filtered into that will be collected by a tube, okay, by a container, all the waste, that is the nitrogenous waste or the urine wastage. Okay, so that's why there is continuous supply of nitrogen, this dialyzer into this machine. From this all the waste will be collected this side, and from here the dialyzer is supplied. So there is continuous flow of waste from the blood into the dialyzing machine. Okay, so it is similar to our kidney. Okay, but what is, how it is different also from the kidney? I told that the waste is collected from the blood into the dialyzer. Okay, because of, by the process of osmosis. By the process of osmosis. What is osmosis? Okay, it is not merely the substances but also some amount of fluid or water is also going along with the waste substances. Nitrogenous waste on their own they cannot come. So all that together moves. So here it moves into this, but it is different from our kidney, natural kidney in one way. In our natural kidney, we have seen that reabsorption occurs. That means whatever waste goes into the nephron, again it is collected back. Where it is collected? Can you remember? At the PCT, isn't it? In the proximal convoluted tubule, there is reabsorption of the useful substances like glucose, vitamin C and all. But that will not occur in the artificial kidney. All the wastes are thrown. If at all any useful substances are also lost, they will be lost. Okay, so that's how it is different. Okay, children. But this helps the person to live longer. Okay, this dialysis or hemodialysis helps the person to live longer. Understood, children? So please all of you complete this diagram. In the next part I shall explain about the process of kidney transplantation. Complete the diagram quickly, then I can go to the next part. Okay, completed. So in the next part I shall go to the artificial kidney. Thank you for now children. Today we shall go to the next part in the next video. Thank you.